Welcome to our webinar. Today we're going to be covering exoplan 3.1 Rijeka. I have a brief PowerPoint we're going to pull up shortly. Start off, my name's Dan Elsinger. I'm an application support engineer with exocad, and I'm joined with my colleague, Lucas Chardulo.
Hey, everybody.
Okay. Go ahead and start off with our PowerPoint here. So today we're going to just cover some highlights with exoplan Rijeka 3.1. And just a quick copyright notice, any redistribution or reproduction, distribution or passing on in whole or part of the broadcast in any form to any other party at any time without prior written consent of exocad, it's strictly prohibited and legal actions will be taken. Oh, went a little too far there. So today, we're going to go ahead and close out of our PowerPoint and pull up our exoplan implant planning DB. So for today's session, we do have a case that is set up for upper and lower implants. Today we're going to focus primarily on the lower implants. So we can see we have a bridge here. We have implant sites for tooth 19 and then tooth 22. Just a couple of things that are new with our dental DB here. You can see we have a 3D preview pane. So any mesh data that we do have loaded, they haven't been aligned yet to any of the coordinates, but you can expand this feature and look accordingly with any of the rotational features you're used to within any of the exocad softwares. Other things to bring up, you're going to notice a rapid pre-planning. So this is a new feature really to kind of help either the GPs or surgeons that are utilizing a software to quickly visualize DICOM data and place implants without having to go through any of the normal workflow steps. So it's a great tool for getting patient consent and showing them what kind of procedure that they'll be needing to perform. So we're going to start off in that mode. The only other thing you'll notice, there's a little icon here, so that'll symbolize with all the 3.1 variants of exocad softwares. There's now a my.exocad account. So that's really the first phase for our software to move towards going dongle-less. So that's a huge feature request. So for us to kind of phase that in, that's the my.exocad account is been implemented for all end users to create their own account. So that's the first phase, and as we move forward, we'll provide a dongle-less solution. So that's where we're headed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and left click on rapid pre-planning to kind of show you that new mode. And then once that opens, we'll go ahead and load our DICOM data. Okay, so I selected my my.exocad account there. Okay, so the first step here, it's telling us right here in this pop-up window, select CT data for patient. So with this case, we actually have it loaded in the project folder, but you can navigate, anywhere within your PC or network that's mapped. So I'll go ahead and select my patient DICOM data, and you'll notice I have the patient name blurred out. So this is another new feature, incognito mode. I'll show you where that's at in the settings here shortly. So once the DICOM data is loaded in, you're going to see this window pop up if you have implants selected for upper and lower jaws. So like I was saying, you do have the ability now to plan implants for upper and lower jaws simultaneously. Um, but due to timing of our webinar today, we're only going to cover the lower jaw. So anytime you select just one of the jaws, it's going to create separate scenes for each jaw at that point. So we'll go ahead and proceed with our lower. All right. So one thing with rapid pre-planning, it's kind of a different layout than what you're used to seeing. The software does by default break everything out in your axial, coronal, curve cut, and panorama views. This is all adjustable within implant control. So any step within the software, this is really a great feature. You have the ability to customize the layout, and not even the arrangement on how the different views are displayed, but what type of views are present in the arrangement. So essentially at every step of the software, you can really fine tune and tailor the software to display the data sets that you want to see, how you want to see it. So really you kind of customize the software to be your own at that point. And anytime you change any of these view formats and you decide that you want it to be your default, then you can just hit save current view arrangement. So it's a great feature. Go ahead and close out of that. Um, but essentially, when you're in rapid pre-plan mode, you have your working areas that you can right click and drag the data accordingly. So I'm moving my mouse up and down or back and forth, and that's adjusting our slice positions. You can kind of see the indicator lines here. As I'm rotating, it's adjusting that plane. Other thing about the different view sets here, you're going to see some drop down menus that allow you to um, you know select different options for each view set. So automatic curve detection, you can see as I adjust my positioning here on the DICOM data, it's automatically adapting the panoramic curve. You still have the ability to adjust everything by the control points. So you'll see the red and green, your start and finish points, and the yellow lines actually control the width. So this is a nice feature that's been added. And then you do have the purple points to kind of adjust accordingly as you see fit. Um, One thing to point out as well within any of these views, if you click in your mouse wheel button, it'll center those views based on that position. So now you can kind of see we're looking in the same area in those different view sets. Um, and then also, essentially, within rapid pre-planning mode, not only can you visualize all the DICOM data, but you can perform additional steps. So if you want to define density references, set your axial and view direction, define mandibular canal, and placing implants. So everything's been loaded. Um, one thing to note with these steps, like let's say we define the mandibular nerve canal within rapid pre-planning, you won't have to perform that step again within the final implant planning mode. So this is just kind of to quickly visualize and place implants, and then you can finalize the planning after the fact. Another thing with this, you do have measurement tools, which we'll get into, and screenshots you can take. So I'm going to go ahead and left click on place implant. And we can see our implant positioning window here is opened. Within this wizard, we'll definitely touch base a lot on this. So there's a lot of changes to this. So now within implant positioning, you can select your implant, your surgical components, and prosthetic components all at the same time. So that can kind of help with visualization and really saving on time and steps within the software. So instead of having separate wizard workflows for each of these items, now it's all combined in one. And from here, you'll see add, remove implants, add anchor pins. So really all of the steps you need to take are within this positioning, implant positioning step. And then once you select implant, when I left click on the implant button, you're going to get this comprehensive list of all the implants that are available in your system at the top. You'll see suppliers listed on the bottom. And then alternatively, you can search by vendor name or specific keywords there. And then you'll see an icon for that vendor. So I'm using the exocad library. It's just for demo purposes only. You'll see small icons here if one of the implants is fully, partially, or there's pilot guided surgical workflows available. So by default, the software won't have all the surgical components installed for you, so you can go to download more. So that's just an integrated workflow to where you can download additional libraries, whether it's an implant, surgical kit, and so forth. So, and really it's alphabetized, so you can scroll through your vendors, expand drop downs, select all the libraries that you want to download, and then proceed to the next step. Other than that, there is a guided filter, so you could show only the guided libraries, and you can add favorites as I did with this star icon. So to start off, we'll click on the implant system we want to use, and then you'll have additional options here to choose your diameter and length. So from here, I can just left click on an implant. And then, like I said, you can start selecting the other parts as well. So we'll do a couple options here, but for 2019, I'm gonna go ahead and select our demo drill kit. And we have fully guided demo. And from here, we have an option from hard bone and soft bone. So when you see the demo drill kits, this will provide a full drill protocol and one of the PDFs that's generated, and it'll provide some extra visualizations for your planning process. And then your prosthetics. So we can see for the exocad library, we do have stock abutments, and then you can select different variants. So this one's at a 15-degree angle. I'm gonna go ahead and select confirm. So really at any point we can left click in our working area to just start a quick placement process. And now we can see our implants in position, and with the full drill kit, we do see the handle in place, and you can turn this off. I just use control and my mouse wheel button and click on an object to turn items on and off. It's kind of a quick, easy part of our UI that allows you to change those visualizations. But from here, whether you're in the main view or one of your secondary views here, you can left click on the implant and drag it into position where you see fit. I'm not too concerned with on actual placement today. This is something we're showing the tools of the software. So, so in main view and the secondary view, you can see arrows that will allow you to rotate and change positioning, the angulation. You can see our sleeve is loaded as well, where depending on the library, there may be different positioning. So you can see with this kit, I can go ahead and adjust my positioning higher if I choose to, change angulation of the implant itself, and then we can rotate the implant accordingly. And then same with our actual sleeve as well. So, depending on how you want to adjust that positioning, maybe rotate more to a facial or buckle orientation for a marker there. And from here, that's the basics of adjusting implant positioning. The other cool thing is you can actually adjust length and diameter on the fly now. So if I deem that I need a longer implant, I can just left click and drag that arrow. And then same with diameters, I can adjust accordingly as well. So anything from different sizes for the length that I have selected, I'll be able to adjust larger, smaller diameters. Okay, so earlier we were talking about the measurement tool. So depending on your implant positioning um, and the reports, one of the great things is you can actually do screenshots from your secondary views. Um, maybe make that a little bit shorter there. And then from here, we can actually add measurements as well. So if I want to kind of click points, I can adjust them accordingly after I left click. And then I can take a screenshot. So additional to those screenshots on my tools here, I can go to my screenshot and image management. So we can see the 2 screenshots I've already taken. You can take more actually from this this tool here, the screenshot and image management. And then from there, you can fine tune which screenshots you want on the reports. And also, if you want to edit them, you can hover over the photo and it's going to open up your default image editing software, which Microsoft Paint by default. You can change that via settings. If you want to add an arrow or some text. So that's kind of a great communication tool. And once you save it, close out, you'll see that adaptation there. So for this process, you can fine tune which report the images go to, or you can actually select here, add all images to report. So that's an awesome feature that's been put in from a customizing your planning reports basically and giving more communication to dentists, surgeons, labs, and patients. So we'll go ahead and close out of this. We'll save 222 there um, for our next step. So leaving rapid pre-plan, we can just select the wizard button. Oh, actually, before we do that, I'll show you the settings like I talked about with our activate incognito mode. So once that's checked off, you'll see this is orange, and that'll hide any patient information when you're displaying the software. Okay, so we'll go into wizard mode, and now we'll see finalize planning. So I'm gonna go ahead and select next, and that's gonna take us back into our implant planning mode that we all know. So, and the first step here is select CT alignment workflow. So I'm gonna do CT to mesh alignment. So we have an optical scan for a lower here. I like to rotate to where I'm in the same orientation in both data sets. From here, I'll adjust my surface threshold to just look at the teeth. And you can do that by also scrolling through and setting references that way. So one thing we can do now is just left click a series of 3 points. You can alternate points from each view or click all 3 on one set and then move to the next. So it's really kind of a personal preference at that point, how you want to utilize the alignment tool. And once you have your points placed, then you can just select next. And the software is going to do somewhat of uh, a, a rough alignment. So at this point, you'll see kind of the basic alignment that's done. You can right click and drag through your secondary views. You can focus any of the views as well and kind of see that orientation of the green lines representing our mesh or scan that we're aligning. Which it looks like software did a pretty good job of the basic alignment, but I like the marked feature regions. This is a really nice tool. And basically at this point, we can left click and drag our mouse so I'm painting areas that I'm telling the software to focus on during the alignment process. So when I'm looking at both data sets, I'm looking for features that are available in both areas. Okay. And then once I select next, the software is actually going to do its best fit alignment on those areas, focusing on the areas that I painted. And then you can repeat that process and checking your alignment and all your views. Make sure you have intimate um, kind of correlation with the green line and the DICOM data, and everything looks great. So we'll continue with acceptable alignment. And then that'll bring us to our defined mandibular canal. And as I was saying previously within rapid pre-planning mode, if we marked this, we wouldn't have to do it again. But another thing to bring up that's new to 3.1 Rijeka exoplan is this step is not mandatory. So you can skip it. But we'll go ahead and mark it for demonstration purposes. And once we mark it and you proceed forward, you you'll have to respect that. So you can't have any collisions at that point with the marked mandibular nerve canal. I like to do this by just left clicking in the metal frame in there, and then I can see that opening to the nerve canal there. And from here, I move to my panoramic curve or my panoramic view and adjust accordingly. You can also kind of unfocus or focus, switch to main view, so you can kind of see your data sets a little clearer and enlarged. So really, as I was saying earlier, it just all depends on what kind of visualization you're wanting to see. Um, but once it's marked, at that point you can determine, do you need to adjust the diameter of the nerve canal? So it's as easy as adjusting the scroll bar, or you can type in a specific value. And if you adjust it by mistake, the software always remembers what that default value is. So that's it's very handy if you're new to the software and you accidentally select something. So you always have that option there. All right, so we'll go ahead and move forward by selecting next. And this is an optional step as well. So if you wanted to, you could do more of a top-down approach and select tooth libraries and and basically place anatomical shapes, and should probably help if I put it over the actual cuspid. So um, that way, if you want that visual representation, you can. I'm just going to go ahead and delete my contact points and skip this step. Um, so as we move forward, just due to timing, but another great feature is we do have a lot more tooth placement options within the software as well, including instant anatomic morphing to adjust your opposing if you load one in. So by default, a great thing about making all those selections in rapid pre-planning, if you didn't do all the implant sites, the software retains that information and will keep that for you. And it's totally adjustable if you need to change, platform size or different type of sleeves. You have that option. So for here, what we can do is go ahead into our sleeve types. And we talked about the newer feature. So for like full drill protocol, um, you can just do universal demo or a guided pilot, fully guided demo. So it's really kind of up to you on what type of system that you're doing. But I will say that the newer variants, um, they are not available for all implant libraries. So it really all depends on if the manufacturer submitted that information to our system integration team. So at that point, we can maybe just do a guided pilot drill for this step, confirm. And then once again, I like to just click in my mouse wheel button in the general area where I'm placing an implant, and then it centers my secondary views based off of that mouse wheel click. So we can just left click in position there, rotate accordingly, maybe adjust some length. And I guess another thing I didn't mention when selecting implants and sleeves and prosthetic components, um, your sleeves and prosthetic components are really, and the implants, they're all dependent on each other. So you're not going to be able to utilize a sleeve that's not linked to an implant. So depending on how that library is submitted by the manufacturer, those will be the sleeves that are available for it. Um, so I just like to make people aware of that. Um, so we can kind of see our implant positioning for tooth 22. We do, I'm sure you all notice, we do have an actual um, visible tooth that's still there. So we're going to go through virtual extraction process here later on, but we'll kind of use this as a guide on kind of adjusting our positioning, and we're just going to get this in a ballpark. Like I said, we're not really too focused on the actual um, proper implant placement today. It's more of how to use the tools so you can achieve that. So, um, yeah. So, anyways, with once we have the placement we like, we talked about sleeve height adjustment, so depending on positioning. Another thing that's very helpful is on any of the implants that you're selected on, if you want to right click on them, so you can align implant direction to, and then depending if there were multiple implants, in this case, you would see the other tooth sites that are there. So we can actually align that angulation to match the other implant site. So it's a quick, easy way to get your parallel placement. And then from here, we can make sure we're in a pretty good height. And that's the basics for placing implants. There is different visualization modes. You can select kind of a more of a natural rendering. There's thresholds to kind of see if you're in more of a denser part of the bone or not. Um, Alternatively, we did discuss some settings for the nerve canal. So if um, one thing you'll see is these kind of outlines around the implants. Let me turn some things off. So that's your safety distances. So you can adjust that accordingly. So if you want to increase or decrease those values, that's definitely an option. And then from here, we talked about adding implants. So there's a quick, easy way to basically you just left click on a tooth and then select on what type of workflow you're going to want to do. And at that point, you'll have the ability to place additional implants. So it's a really intuitive, easy way to add or remove implants during the planning process. And then same for your anchor pins, as we discussed. It doesn't, we won't really place any for this, but it's as simple as selecting your system, your length, and then just left clicking wherever you want those to be placed. And then within our wizard, if we want to get rid of that selection, we just hit the trash can icon. And now we're back to where we were. So, um, yeah. So from here, let's say we're happy with the placement themselves and we want to move forward. So we'll go ahead and select next. And right here, screenshot images for report have been found. So we can hit continue. All images related to the final planning are up to date, proceed with output, or you can check them at that point. So software recognizes that we took those earlier. We're going to go ahead and continue. And at this stage, essentially with this checkbox, we're confirming that we're meeting all standards and and protocols for the implant placement. So we won't read through that today, but potentially you may want to save a scene at this point. If you need more of a surgeon or dentist approval at that point to kind of take over, or you can I agree, select I agree. So what's happening right now is software is actually generating a PDF report. And once that's completed, we'll be able to open that report. And the nice thing is too, it actually saves it to the project folder. So if you open your project directory, you'll see that PDF. And then also you can hit show report at this point, and we'll just do kind of a brief overview. So the implant planning report, as we go through, you'll see a table of contents. We'll kind of scroll through these. So you'll see your DICOM information and project notes. And then as you scroll down, your panoramic radiograph images with and without the implants. And then you'll see an implant overview. So it's kind of breaking down the implants that were placed and the information for those. And then you'll see some angles that were associated and settings that were used through the planning process. Excuse me. And then tooth 19. So we're going to have a separate breakdown for each implant site. So it's going to show all the different cross sections that are generated. And then tooth 22. So each implant site will have its own page. And then the additional images. So those are those screenshots that I quickly took just to kind of show the functionality. And then a disclaimer at the end. And we'll go ahead and close out of this. So our next step here, I'm going to go ahead and move forward to design surgical guide. Okay, so we discussed about virtual extractions earlier. Another pretty cool feature here. So you actually can select which mesh to use for your guide design. So you may have a scenario where you'll receive multiple data sets. Maybe you have a DICOM of a prosthetic that patient wears, and you use that for your planning, but then you receive an optical scan that you want to use to actually make the surgical guide. So you have the ability to load from file a different data set at this point. Um, so we'll go ahead and load this scan in place, and we can see it hasn't been aligned yet. So we're gonna align our meshes. And me personally, this is something I like to do. I like to go to manual first and just really kind of drag everything more into position and just get my rotation in a similar orientation. Just makes it a little bit easier when you're selecting points. Definitely not required, but um, and then from there I would go to automatically. So it's telling you set point on floating mesh. So um, and then the next step would be set a point on the fixed mesh. So from here, we can turn on our arch scan that's already been aligned, and I can select those points, right? And from there, we could attempt the alignment process or keep selecting additional points. So it's really kind of depending on how similar your meshes are. So from there, we'll select perform alignment. Got pretty close. So then we'll do best fit matching. At this point, what we're looking for, you can see the deviation scale here. Close you are to 0 is obviously where you want to be. These are very, it's the same scan, so it aligned properly, but we just want to show that functionality. So as I select next, that brings us straight to our sleeve mounts. So one thing we can do now is go into expert mode. So I left clicked on expert mode. I'm right clicking in the background, and then I'm going to select extract tooth. So with extract tooth, we can see our jaw scans now. I can turn off the original one. And now I'm going to left click on the tooth that I want to extract. And you can see the software will um, basically segment that tooth and extract that for you. So from here, I got to tell the software what tooth I just extracted, right? And then you have some options. So whether you want to have a virtual pre-op, and that's what's shown here, or you can do no copy or do a direct copy. But I'll just leave it on no copy here just so we can kind of cover some other information and have that good visualization. So one thing at this point with those extractions, you can turn down your threshold and really look at the direction you want your extraction site to go towards. So as I'm adjusting this, it's adjusting the socket to match that long axis. So it's just a quick, easy option to do that. Then we can turn off and see the collapsed site. At this point, you could turn on your implants and see your positioning and say we're happy with that. We can hit OK. Um, we can look at where our sleeves are placed. Everything looks fairly good there. We'll hit OK. So at this point, it's saying anatomical tooth situation has changed, which we did intentionally. So we're going to continue anyway. And software recognizes we changed, our arch form. It's asking if we want to delete those planing results, which you can, and then you'll just have to go back to that step or do not delete. So that's what we're going to select here. We're going to keep those planing results. And I'm going to go back to wizard mode shortly. Just another feature. Right click in the background again, and we'll see 3D surface editor. So at this point, we can see our extraction site. So if we wanted to, potentially remove some more data there for some tissue healing, or we could go to smooth. So you have a lot of options here when it comes to adjusting, and you could crop data, maybe cut away some information. But at this point, I'm not um, overly concerned with anything with the quality of the scan. So I'm going to just go ahead and hit OK. We'll continue. And now I'm going to go back into wizard mode. And this is where I can adjust my sleeve mount heights and thicknesses. So, maybe you want to increase the heights of those to make sure they connect with your base mesh. You can add rotational markers if you choose to. So right now, singles marked, multiple or all. So you kind of have a little bit of flexibility there. If we had anchor pins, then it would be a very similar process for the anchor pin mounts. And then also there's printer presets. So if you do have an integrated 3D printer, these manufacturers, they've actually provided actual settings, basically recommended starting points. So, and then from there, you can select which material is going to be utilized for your surgical guide itself. So um, as you're getting implemented with 3D printing or potentially sending your files to someone else for printing, it's kind of obviously a great starting point, anything the manufacturers recommend. So at this point, we're setting our insertion direction to control how our surgical guide is going to fit onto the existing teeth and arch form. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit apply. And once I do so, it's generating a virtual blockout based on the settings you see here. So your offset's gonna control that distance between the guide and the patient's arch, and allow undercuts is really how much undercut the surgical guide's gonna engage into. So more deeper retention, you would increase that value. Tighter fit, you would decrease your spacing, or more passive, you would increase. So that's really great starting points. Just wanted to kind of point that out. And then once that is generated, you do have the ability freeforming to add, remove, and smooth the blockout that's present. But I think we don't need to really kind of cover that free-forming process today. So, design surgical guide top. So this is really, we're going to left-click points, a series of points, and this is basically we're adjusting the perimeter of where the guide's going to interact with the patient's arch and natural teeth that are still present. So from here, go ahead and make this a little bit more visible there. And like I said, we're just kind of creating some points. And then we'll come back around the facial side and double click to close that spline. And then from here, we can apply, and the software will generate um, your base thickness of based off the values that are there. And then you can select next, and that'll bring you to our attachments. So at this point, if you wanted to place a window, so when you select the preview button for any of the attachments, you can actually see the effects that that placement will have. So this way we can make sure that the surgical guide's fully seated in the patient's arch form to make sure it's in the proper placement. To add additional attachments, you'll have to unselect the preview, and then there's a drop down for the different attachments. So whether you want to do text, for embossed or debossed, you have the options to, and then from there you can adjust your size accordingly. Um, you can also type in a different variant of what's going to be presented there. So once you left click to place, then you can left click and drag accordingly to get the positioning you want. And other than that, if for maybe some mounts that aren't fully supported, you could left click each mount to kind of create that connector. You can adjust your thickness accordingly. So for here, um, other thing, once you place something, if you don't want to use it, you can just hit the delete button. So it's kind of a quick change there. And then there's other supports that you can add as well. So if you wanted to do kind of add in more of a support bar for 3D printing purposes, you can. But for now, we'll just go ahead and select next. And our surgical guide is merging. And at this point, once it's done merging, we'll be able to add, remove, and smooth any material. So and grab and pull as well. So if I wanted to kind of pull up some material, get a little bit more coverage on that sleeve mount for more support. And then the freeform tab will allow you to add, remove, and smooth. The inner channels of the sleeves are protected, so we'll go ahead and move forward with next. And now, once again, it's creating that second report for the surgical guide that we just created. We'll hit continue so it can add those screenshots we took. And this report will also be added to the project folder, and we'll open that up here shortly once it's done generating. Okay, so for the surgical report, so nice thing, it gives a really great visualization of what you just created. And then from there, you're gonna see a separate page for each tooth. So tooth number 19, we can see the parts we selected. And then here's the protocol I was talking about. So you can see that step process. So step one was your tissue punch, and then moving forward to your different diameter tools and a driver mark. So it's really kind of painting the picture of every step that's needed and the tools that are needed for that protocol. And then as you scroll down, you'll see the same information for tooth 22. We did not select the fully guided protocol for that site. And then any implant information, sleeve and kit information, so were used. and those other screenshots we added and the disclaimer at the end. So I'll go ahead and close out of this and select next because we're done with that part of it. The only other things that I was going to share with you all is the use of our exoprint. So if you had a corresponding printer, you can actually left click if you have that software installed on the same PC in the default installation. The next time you open your Dental DB, your printer icons will be present. And then with this window, it's going to see all files that we generated, and you'll be able to fine tune, select every file that you want to 3D print, and then you can hit proceed to printing. It's actually going to load that part we just designed, that surgical guide, onto the build plate for us, and then depending on the software you use, it's going to you'll utilize their tools to finish that process. So just wanted to kind of show that there's our part we just created. Go ahead and close out. But and then alternatively, maybe you don't have a 3D printer yet, and you can utilize Dental Share. So with Dental Share, you actually have the ability to um, send for surgical guide production or design. So you have a lot of options there, and you can hit OK. And at that point, the software is going to go ahead and send that file to the recipient I chose. So, in the scenario, if you have a printer, definitely recommend looking at Exoprint and maybe installing that software on the same PC. And then if you don't, you have Dental Share, so that can take care of your fabrication needs as well. Lucas, did we have any questions or anything that came up during the
Yeah,
presentation?
nice job. So yeah, we do have a couple good questions that have been coming in. One question asking what the workflow is like for a dentalist jaw. And we definitely have a workflow for that. And we utilize dual scan protocol. So you'll have a CT scan of the patient wearing an appliance with radiopaque markers, and then a separate CT scan of that appliance with the CT markers. And when you get to the step in the software that Dan showed where you pick the alignment process, so we did in this case was CT to mesh alignment. At that step, you would just pick CT to CT alignment, and it's actually an automated step. The software identifies radiopaque markers on each object, and then merges those together automatically. And then kind of routes you to the appropriate steps for that workflow. And then for the guide, there's a step that extracts the integular surface of the denture, and that's what it uses to design the guide on. So we have a good workflow for that.
Yeah, and you got that option to use the prosthetic as a guide or design one like we just did. So you do have options there as well.
Another question, how would you create a temporary bridge? So that's a good question. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about the integration of exoplan with our other software, DentalCAD. So that's the software you can use to design your restorations, immediate load abutments, and crowns and bridges. So at this point, the case that Dan just finished up, if you also have DentalCAD software installed, you can just take this same case, start it up in DentalCAD, and there's guided workflows in there that will let you design the temporary restorations or your immediate load parts.
Yeah, and if we would have taken the time to do the tooth placement that we skipped earlier, you could actually bring that initial placement in to DentalCAD with you and then adjust accordingly within DentalCAD. So that's pretty cool as well.
A couple minutes left. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and type those in. Another question asking if it's possible that we make a video for anterior teeth implants. So that's something we'll take into consideration. Thanks for the suggestion. Looks like that might be about it.
Okay. Well, I do want to say thank you to everybody that that joined.